definitely going to draw the attention of certain people in certain positions of power. If he you know that he can make friends with extremely wealthy people who have a lot of influence. He has questionable morals, so you could get him to do things that you would want him to do. He'd be a very valuable asset to some intelligence agencies.
Well, and you mentioned that whole moral compass aspect, and that when it comes to people with money, there's some things that I will never understand, but that's because I will never be in that position. If you're an individual and you have more money than God, mm-hmm. and you can buy anything, and you have bought anything, the way a man's mind works is you always want the next level. Good enough never is. You're always trying to go to the next level, get the next best thing. And when you've already got when you've got the biggest boat, when you have a boat as big as a football field, when you have 12 houses that are really castles, when you have a private jet that'll take you anywhere, mm-hmm. when you have it all, you look for something else that you don't have.
Right.
And if you can go into a nightclub and at the drop of a hat, pick up any gal in the bar, that's one thing. But what can you have that society says you cannot have? And most moral compasses of most people say, well, you can do this, but you can't do that. Mm-hmm. People like that don't necessarily have a moral compass because that's for others. And I am not part of others. I'm something exceptional. And the biggest example of that is one of Epstein's buddies, I guess maybe former buddies, I don't know. That's Prince Andrew.
That's right.
From birth, he was a big play baby, and he's 66 years old, has never really lived a life, and he was accused of all this debauchery.
That's right.
Him and many others.
Yeah. And
in fact, you've got some information on there. I think some.
Yeah, I could name. I saw the manifest, the flight manifest to the island, the secret island on the Lolita Express is what they call the plane. Mm-hmm. And
Lolita, by the way, a movie from the 50s where the head character played by, I can't think of his name.
He was in To Kill a Mockingbird.
I can't his name will come to me. Yeah. But fell in love with a stepdaughter who was 13 years old, I believe. So that's right. That's the whole name behind the Lolita.
And this is not a name that the media gave this plane.
This is what they called it.
This is what they literally called their plane.
Exactly.
And so there's on the manifest, the Trump family's on there. You have Ted Kennedy Jr., Ed Kennedy, Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, Sandy Berger, Richard Branson, Alan Dershowitz, the Duchess and Duke of York.
Both.
Who
was Prince Andrew?
Prince Andrew.
Yeah.
I think that's him, right?
Yeah.
Mick Jagger, who we know he likes younger women.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's a pedophile. But he just likes younger women.
Sure.
David Koch of the Koch brothers was on there.
Is that the dead one or the live one?
I think he's dead.
All right.
Henry Kissinger, Rupert Murdoch, this guy Larry Summers. I've never seen his name. Looked into it. He's the former Secretary of the Treasury and a former president of Harvard.
Really?
Peter Soros, who is his father's pretty famous, George Soros.
Right.
Steve Bannon, and Tony Blair. And there's many other movie stars, Kevin Spacey, Alec Baldwin, people like that. I think Naomi Campbell was on there once. Mm-hmm. So they would use this plane to do humanitarian missions over to Africa, right? But on these planes, with a lot of these high-profile, we'll say Bill Clinton, he flew 26 times. He admitted to being on there 4 times. Those 4 times, the Secret Service was with him. They're on the manifest as well. Mm-hmm. The other times that he's flown, he had no Secret Service.
Now, how do you know that Bill Clinton, what proof do you have that Bill Clinton was on there 22 times that were not admitted by him?
In a black book was stolen from Epstein's home by one of his maids, and she was trying to sell it. And in this black book, there's phone numbers, email addresses of extremely powerful people around the country, around the world. The flight manifest was in there. And
now, where did you see this information?
This is online. Anybody can find it.
Okay.
This was published by the New York Times.
So this information you're giving is based on an article that you read published by the New York Times.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
And so that goes along with his assets. He worked them like intelligence assets.
Mm-hmm.
And me being in some meetings that I've seen, and I wasn't high level. I was just a run of the mill guy who
you were an operative.
We would take money and pay people for information, make
Mm-hmm.
friends and give them money.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm.
There were some shady characters that we have to deal with around the world. But we have to sit in briefings about, here's what's coming up. Here's what we're being charged with doing. And we were taught how to work assets,
Mm-hmm.
How to make friends. And it takes a long time to do this.
Is that because you're building confidence or
Building confidence, making friendships, getting them to trust you,
showing that you actually can deliver the goods for the information,
and giving them a lot of money.
What's a lot of money? What's a lot of money for what kind of information? Give me a quick example.
I would say $10,000 for where a certain person's going to be on a certain day.
And you're giving this money to somebody who it's $10,000.
That's probably more than they would earn in their lifetime.
Okay. So for somebody in the States, that would be like giving them $1.5 million to $2 million.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want to get information from the Duke of York or put him in a compromising position, imagine the amount of money or the amount of entertainment you would have to provide for that.
Yeah.
The amount of trust you would have to build.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Prince, the Duke, Prince William, Andrew, what's his name?
Prince Andrew is the one who's accused of this. The 66-year-old son of Queen Elizabeth.
Right. So Prince Andrew, without a doubt, is not the brightest bulb. If you watch the interview that he gave with the BBC, first of all, I have no idea how that was allowed to happen.
I don't either. I don't know how the Crown ever let him do that, because I watched it and he represented himself horribly.
Terrible.
Horribly.
And, he's bumbling. He's almost simple-minded. The reporter gave him the biggest softballs to hit. He could have walked out of there on a cloud. Like, it was just, he could have easily gotten through it, and the BBC would have dropped it and never followed it any further.
Well, and that's important to note that the BBC did the interview, because the BBC is the British Broadcast Corporation, right. And most countries, including in the UK, they don't have a huge private network for television and radio. Most of it is run by the state.
Right.
So basically, the state is not going to try to blindside a member of the Crown. The state is going to try to do something to make the member of the Crown, give them an out, give them an alibi, let them talk their way out of it, so that people say, well, I can kind of see where he's going there, and leave it be.
And we talked before the podcast about the fandom here in the U.S. for the royal family.
Yeah.
And imagine what it's like in the U.K.
It's something that I don't understand, but then I'm not a Brit.
Right.
So I don't get it. They basically gave him a softball to hit over the wall, and he whiffed big time.
Yes. And if I could, I would suggest everybody look on YouTube, look up Jim Can't Swim, and he breaks down psychologically how you can tell that this man is lying on some of these answers, and he's backtracking, and he's trying to cover his own tail, and he's doing it very poorly.
Yeah, and I watched that video. In fact, you sent me the link, and I watched it. You can do that, but even without, I mean, the
just go in blind. Something's wrong.
Yeah, because this is the video, and then he says, "Hey, you can tell by the look on his face. You can tell by the expression in his eyes, and maybe you can, and maybe you can't, but just the answers the guy gave."
Right.
I mean, the most bizarre thing that he said, that Prince Andrew said to me, was, "You know what? I had decided that I was going to not be able to see Jeffrey Epstein anymore. So I personally went to his house and told him that, and then stayed at his house for 4 nights."
For 4 nights.
Who does that?
And during that 4 nights, there was a dinner party.
Yeah.
Where there were young women there.
Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't think there was a dinner party." And then, "Yeah, you're on the guest list. You're the guest of honor."
Yeah.
"Oh, well, it wasn't really a dinner party. It was just dinner."
It wasn't really, I think something along the lines of, it wasn't really a dinner party. It was just a small gathering of some people for dinner. Well, that's a party, friend.
Right.
I mean, he stepped on his dick more times than anyone could.
Absolutely.
And I think he really does believe that, well, of course I did nothing wrong. I'm Prince Andrew. You have to look past that.
His mom's the Queen of England.
Exactly.
So you can look at that in one case, say, okay, this guy's obviously just a partier. He wants to party and have fun. He's been sheltered his whole life, and this guy could give him a party, so he went to party. When you look deeper into it, Jeffrey Epstein's connections with the people who are actually in charge of running countries, the amount of access he has to them is astonishing. You talked about the high school that he taught at. Graduated high school at 16, dropped out of NYU, got a job teaching for one of the most prestigious high schools in all of Manhattan.
Without a college degree.
Without a college degree. He's teaching math.
Yeah. So the guy's obviously bright, because at this time he's a nothing.
Right. The man who hired Jeffrey Epstein, his last name was Barr, B-A-R-R.
Okay. Hired him at the high school?
At the high school.
Okay.
He was the headmaster or president of the high school, whatever. His son is William Barr, the current Attorney General for the United States.
Wow.
Which is odd. Okay. William Barr worked at a law firm that represented Jeffrey Epstein back in, can't remember what day, he was in trouble. I think this was back in 2008.
Okay.
So William Barr worked for that law firm. They represented Jeffrey Epstein. And now I think that William Barr is having to recuse himself from any involvement in the Epstein case.
Because of the involvement.
Because of that involvement.
Yeah.
When he was being vetted for the job of Attorney General, the Trump administration asked him if this was going to be an issue back in 2008.
Because Donald Trump was on that Lolita Express too.
Exactly.
Well, that's the whole odd thing about that. I mean, Democrat, Republican, right. Independent, royal, not so much. The
Israelis,
Arabs.
Yep.
Everybody who's anybody was involved with this guy.
While we're talking about his legal troubles, Jeffrey Epstein in 2007, the FBI had a 53-page indictment they were ready to serve and put him to prison for life. For human trafficking, for sexual assault on minors, all sorts of stuff. The Attorney General in Miami at the time, when they arrested him, so he would have went away for life. The Attorney General Alexander Acosta was the Miami prosecutor at the time.
Okay.
He reached a plea deal, and it's called a non-prosecution agreement. And he was only sentenced to 13 months.
And if I remember, he had all kinds of charges against him. And the one he actually pled guilty to was sexual abusing a 14-year-old girl.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where he says there was no sex, it was just a massage.
Yeah.
Which was kind of his MO. And we can get into that if you want to get creepy about it. But this non-prosecution agreement, though, it kept all the co-conspirators a secret, where none of the victims were able to access who else was involved in this. So those are all secret. Everything's gone, called a non-prosecution agreement, which is very strange given his connections in politics. This guy Acosta ended up working as the U.S. Secretary of Labor under Donald Trump.
Really?
He has since resigned because of this.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Again, I'm not as big a conspiracy theorist fan as I used to be, but this thing is it's unbelievable. It's almost like Jeffrey Epstein, who was there's a very fine line between confidence and arrogance. Okay. If you're confident, you make things happen. If you're arrogant, well, you're not making things happen. You're overstepping your bounds.
You're going too far, flying too close to the sun.
That's exactly right. And I think that's exactly what Epstein did. He figured, look, I've got tons of dirt on everybody. Right. I'm not going anywhere.
Look at the Clintons' body count.
Exactly.
And nobody's touching them.
And I think that he thought he was not unlike the Clintons. Okay. Right. But there's having dirt on so many people that they can't touch you. But if you've got dirt on so many people that all the movers and shakers in the world take a vote and they all agree this guy's got to go, right. Well, you've flown too close to the sun, Mr. Icarus, and your wings have melted and you're going to plummet to the ground.
And this goes back to my original beginning in the intelligence community where like I said, I just barely dipped my toes in. I sat in one briefing that made my skin absolutely crawl. And from that day forward, I figured I want nothing to do with this.
Can you talk about it? I don't want to put you on the spot.
It involves a foreign government